Greetings, pet lovers. Bridget here with First Street Pets, and today we're going to talk about, should cats wear collars? Like many other subjects around pets, this is one that can cause a lot of controversy. People have strong opinions one way or the other, and their reasons for doing things. In this video, I'll talk about the pros and cons of cats wearing collars and about an alternate form of identification that all cats should have. So what are some of the reasons that a pet owner would put a collar on their cat? So here's some of the pros. They may just like to give their cat a cute accessory. You'll see a lot of collars on little kittens that are only in the house. You can purchase them in cute different colors and patterns. So it's more of an accessory or an adornment than a practical piece of equipment. A more practical use is that the collar can have an ID tag on it. And this can be very helpful if your cat should become lost or get out of the house when they're not supposed to be outside, or become ill or injured and are found by a good Samaritan. That person can call you and you can come and get your cat. Another pro is that the collar can identify your cat as an owned pet. Because there are so many cats outside, sometimes people believe that they are all abandoned or just feral cats or free-roaming cats that aren't spayed or neutered. Having a collar on can indicate to other people that your cat is owned and that they shouldn't bother it unless it appears to be ill or injured. Some people like to put a bell on the collar to warn birds and other prey animals from their cat. There's a lot of controversy around that, the cats versus birds thing. It's actually more of a false dichotomy that's trumped up by news outlets just to make exciting stories. Many bird people are also cat people. Got to be practical about this. But the bell will make noise and deter other animals from being captured. But many people have cats for the purpose of capturing rodents, which are a nuisance in many situations. So whether you want to do that or not is up to you. There are some definite downsides to putting a collar on your cat. One of the most significant is that your cat can get hung up on something and actually hang to death. And unfortunately, this does happen, especially if your cat is going outside. They can get hung up on a fence post, on the branch of a tree, on any number of things can get hung up under the collar, and they can be seriously injured or even killed if they're unable to get loose of the collar. I have personally experienced a number of cats getting injured by their collars because I've been a pet sitter for many years. I've known many cats besides my own. I was caring for a cat once who was wearing a collar, and he must have been grooming himself. And so he hooked his lower jaw around the collar where it was all night. So when I came the next morning, the collar was in the mouth, so the cat was unable to eat or drink, and the head was swollen up like a baseball. So fortunately, I was able to get the collar off, take the cat to the vet, and he recovered. But had I not been checking on him daily, or if he were outside or got stuck somewhere, that could have had a very different outcome. Now, what about harnesses? You will see some people putting a harness on their cat instead of a collar. A harness is a great tool for teaching your cat to walk on a leash, and I will link to another article I've written on that subject with some resources for further research. But a harness is definitely not a thing that you want to leave on a cat all the time. Now, while training, as I explained in the article, you may put the harness on the cat or kitten while they're wearing it supervised around the house, just so they can get used to it. But this is not something you want to leave on unsupervised. This is a rigid, usually a piece of nylon or leather, and it's going around the neck, under the legs, and it could cause discomfort and could easily get hung up on something. So in my opinion, while this is a great tool for teaching a cat how to walk and getting them safely out of the house, it is not something that should replace a collar, or it's not something that should be used to put an ID tag on. What about breakaway collars? This is the type that you always see recommended for cats and even in some situations for dogs. There are two different kinds of breakaway collars. One is a solid nylon collar with a sort of break in it, and then there's a little piece of elastic that attaches the two ends together. So when fitted properly, the collar should stay on the cat, but if it gets hung up on something to the point where the cat is in danger, it should either break or slip off of their head. I've also seen other kinds with a little snap that is solid, but is supposed to come loose if the cat gets hung up on something. Another kind that I'm aware of is called the Beastie Band. Maybe other companies make it, but that's the only one I'm aware of. The whole collar is made of neoprene, so the whole thing stretches, so it can sit comfortably on the cat's neck when they're doing their normal activity, but it stretches quite a bit and would easily come off if the cat were to get hung up on something. But unfortunately, there are some downsides to these collars as well. If they really do what they're supposed to do, they come off a lot. And this is a common complaint of cat owners who let their cats outside with these types of collars on, is they buy a collar, they buy a tag, they put it on, and 2 days later it's gone. So they're either finding them in the garden a week later or never finding them. So they're wasting a lot of money buying multiple collars and tags only to have them fall off and get lost. I have seen these types of collars deteriorate over time and the elastic becomes stiff to the point where it doesn't stretch. So it wouldn't actually work. I would not rely on the kind with a little piece of elastic to do what it's supposed to do. The Beastie Band is actually the only one that I would recommend, and I have used them if you're going to put a collar on your cat. I don't currently, my cats are indoors only. But when I did, this was the type of collar I used. However, there can also be issues with that. I had a cat who disappeared. He had outdoor access and he came back a month later. I never found him. He wasn't at the shelter. He wasn't anywhere in the neighborhood. He miraculously reappeared a month later and his leg had gone through the collar. And because the collar stretched so much, it went under his armpit. And presumably had been like that for a month. So that entire area of skin was just wide open and infected. It was a really, really nasty wound. And I ended up having 2 surgeries on him to repair that because the skin and tissues were so damaged from having contact with that tight collar for so long. So things can still happen even with the best designed collars. So again, you want to make sure that your cats are under your supervision. Obviously, that was a special circumstance because he went missing and I couldn't find him. But you want to be checking on your cats at least daily if they're wearing a collar to make sure that it's safely in place. A good alternative or an addition to a collar with a tag is a microchip. Now, I have several articles and videos about microchipping, which are linked in the description. I highly encourage you to check them out because many, if not most people, don't understand how microchipping works and how they are supposed to register the chip. So I detail all that in my other videos and articles. Microchipping provides lifetime identification for a cat. Even if they should change owners or you should change your address or phone number, you can always change the information on the registration. The only downside is that, of course, it isn't visible. So someone does have to scan the cat for that chip. So if your cat ended up at a shelter or veterinarian or rescue group that has a scanner, they would be able to get the chip number and contact you. However, if someone finds your cat and decides to keep it, not realizing that it has an owner, and they don't do that, there would be no way of knowing that that microchip is in the cat. So overall, the decision to put a collar on your cat is up to you, but just choose one wisely, supervise them, especially when getting them used to it, and be aware of all the pros and cons of the different types of collars that are available.